Welcome to Search Committee Training Videos, home of 20-minute video presentations designed to provide essential skills to search committee chairs and human resources professionals. Hi, I'm Chris, the Search Guy. I've spent the last 20 years perfecting the art of the search committee process. I have personally served on hundreds of committees, have trained more than 1,000 higher ed professionals, and I've consulted with dozens of institutions on the process. I'm also the author of this handy-dandy book right here. Today's session is designed to provide an overview of the topics that should be covered in any search committee training program. They include instruction on how to find, screen, select, evaluate, and interview candidates. Let's begin. How do you go about finding the best candidates, minority candidates, or candidates who fit your organizational culture? What are the most effective ways of determining which candidates are best for a position? How can we best prepare the chair for the difficult charge of leading a search committee? The answers to these questions lie in properly training and preparing the search committee. Let's look at the topics, techniques, and helpful tidbits that will serve the committee well. First, the search committee topics. These 5 topics should be covered in any training program for a search committee: recruiting and networking, screening and evaluation, diversity, bias, and cultural competence, interviewing, as well as institution-specific matters related to training needs. First, recruiting and networking. Recruiting is the active process of reaching out or an outreach process to finding candidates wherever they may be, whether they are in the job market or not. Advertising is a more passive process wherein you kind of put an announcement into a media, whether it is paper, online, or any other form, and hope that people see that particular advertisement. However, recruitment is an active process that also seeks candidates who may not be interested in a position today, but you bring your announcement to their attention in hopes that you would entice them into the process. So how do you go about doing that at your particular institution? In some organizations, the search committee is involved and should be involved in using their own personal network to reach out to different populations and share information about the particular vacancy. That should be a responsibility of everyone on the committee. That expands the institution's reach to many different types of communities, and also the members of the committee have the advantage of knowing what the institution needs and being able to pre-screen applicants before they actually apply for the position. So this is a great process, and the institution should facilitate this process by giving each member of the search committee, as well as members of the department that is hiring, some position announcements. And position announcements are no more than flyers, whether they be paper or electronic flyers, that can be easily distributed with the essential information about the opening in hand. It may have information about the institution, information about the job, and any other kind of sales or marketing oriented information that we would want to highlight to tell people how great an institution we have. So the active process of posting announcements at professional conferences, or the networking process of letting friends, family members, colleagues, and others we might come about know about our institution and our openings, is an active process that every committee should be involved in. Also, what are your institution's protocols for trying to find applicants in communities different than the organization normally recruits from? So if you have a desire to have a more diverse institution, then you have to have some sort of means to ensure that your outreach activities reaches communities different than the ones you normally recruit within. So there are many ways of getting there. Each institution should have some sort of protocols to ensure that their recruiting and networking activities reach minority populations, as well as populations when you have a challenge finding talent, whether it be a nursing position or a physicist or a person with a particular language competency. You can't expect that in areas where there's a low supply of talent or talent that is not normally affiliated with your institution, that you sit back and advertise and hope to find great talent. You have to go and find that highly skilled computer professional or the multilingual person who works in student services. So what are the organization's techniques for getting there? It's a great opportunity for the search committee to be trained on the institution's policies, procedures, and protocols to enhance the recruiting and networking process. Embedded in this general idea of recruiting and networking is the fact that each search committee member, it really serves in an ambassadorial role because they have to represent the institution in many different quadrants and communities. And so, what should I say? What should I do? A little coaching might help me to ensure I'm presenting the proper face, the proper policies and procedures, our salary ranges, how we hire, the time frames. It is a great opportunity for the ex officio member of the committee, such as an HR professional, an equal opportunity professional, a diversity advocate, or anyone who is trained and experienced in the recruitment and search committee process to inform the committee of how to do this role well. In the earlier video on search committee orientation, we talked about the ambassadorial role of members of the committee and the protocols for helping to do some outreach. And then advertising suggestions. Members of the committee may have the opportunity of sharing their knowledge of different sources or different media in their particular profession. So if we're in the math department, the HR department, and the department head may be aware of 2 to 5 different advertising sources, but there may be other affinity groups or minority advertising sources or just other sources for different sub-disciplines that the institution may not be aware of. So it's a great opportunity for the committee members to share their ideas with administration so that we can ensure we have the proper outreach in all different quadrants or communities. The next topic is screening and evaluating. We must train our committee members on how to do this properly. This is one of the reasons I wrote my book, Search Committees, a comprehensive guide to successful faculty, staff, and administrative searches. It's because coming into higher ed 20 years ago, and I see it happening even today, that people are expected to serve on or lead committees without proper training on how to screen resumes and CVs, or how to be an active and professional participant in a search committee process. We assume that we will learn the right way of doing things by osmosis, simply by being or simply by serving. While that is true, it is not a great way of working because the value of properly being trained cannot be underestimated. So, what are some of the things that a committee should be trained on? Determining the selection methods, developing selection criteria. So, the selection methods include obviously screening the paper applications, um telephone interviews, video interviews, regular interviews, presentations, questionnaires, work samples, and many other selection methods. Which of these methods makes most sense for the particular vacancy? And then once we've selected those vacancies, how will we determine which criteria to use to evaluate a person's resume or a person's presentation? What are those criteria? One hint about those criteria should be listed in the job advertisement, should be listed in the charge, should be in your organizational analysis when you go about setting up the position. They should not be created randomly or ad hoc by the committee. They should be grounded upon previous work. Then you should develop a screening instrument, and that's a way of ensuring that those criteria that we agreed upon are actually documented, and we have a protocol for using that to evaluate, say, the resume or the teaching demonstration or whatever the case may be, or even the interview. These screening instruments ensure a certain amount of rigor and fairness. Makes good sense to have each of the candidates evaluated by the same standards. Also, rating and ranking candidates. Do we rate or rank them? And at what stage of the process do we do so? Committees should be informed about the right way of doing so. Reference and background checks, are they used as a screening device or a selection device? In a screening device, it becomes a hurdle. You have to do this. You have to pass the reference check before you proceed in the process. Or is the reference and background check at the very end of the process used to select the final candidate? It makes a difference. Your committee should be informed about how your organization does this process. Next topic for training for search committees is diversity, bias, and cultural competence. This is a very important topic that cannot be underestimated, and maybe we should do an entire program, an entire 20-minute video on this topic because of its importance. However, let's go over it very briefly here. Eliminating bias in decision making, we all come to the world, or rather we learn through our experiences, good, bad, and indifferent, that we make prejudgments about the world around us and stereotyping and categorizing, the world around us for a variety of reasons to include efficiently assimilating information. So the point is we all have bias. That is a part of the human experience. The question is, what do we do with that bias? How do we acknowledge it and mitigate it so that we are fair with others? And there are ways of getting there using objective criteria, as we've talked about before in the previous slide with screening instruments really helps, and deciding in advance what are those criteria we're going to use so that later in the process I don't inadvertently make comments or use stereotypical words to describe female candidates than male candidates, and thereby enhancing the value of male candidates over female candidates because of my bias. By the way, the research shows that both men and women do that. We describe women in a stereotypical fashion, even in areas that are really gender neutral. And that is something that every committee should acknowledge. And that's just one example of bias that can prevent us from making sound decisions. Cultural competence is another area which is similar. The idea of ensuring the committee has the appropriate sensitivities to evaluate fairly candidates from different backgrounds and have an understanding therein, as well as just to be aware of different institutions, whether it's an HBCU or institutions internationally, and their reputation and their abilities and things like that, to make sure that we're being fair to everyone and not assuming that which I know or my personal experience is more valuable than others. Organizational fit, or will a person get along and do well in our particular institution because we have a unique culture? Sometimes this is used in a right way, and sometimes it's used in a wrong way. When it's used in a wrong way, it's based upon my particular preference, and maybe this person won't, quote, fit around here. And what do you mean by fit? Is that your preference, or is that the institution's requirements, the institution's standards, or the traditions, or the way of working at that institution? One way of ensuring that this sort of bias does not devalue candidates or cause us to select people just like us is to ensure that that cultural fit or organizational criteria is documented, stated, or measurable. When we say that, oh, this person didn't seem to be, as interested in doing research. Well, are you a research institution? Is a research agenda a requirement for your institution, and where is that stated? Is that a part of tenure requirements or not? Because sometimes people inadvertently use these criteria to undermine candidates they don't like late in the process, or candidates who are different than them. And the key is, whatever that criteria is, whether it's an affinity for technology, liking to do research versus teaching, whether a person's engaged in service learning activities, or whatever the criteria you use to describe your cultural fit, it must be documented, stated, and measurable, and agreed upon in advance. The committee must police itself, and we must give them the autonomy and empower them to think that way. And so at the initial training session with the committee, It's a great opportunity to say, hey, we're all biased and we must work together to ensure that we don't do things unintentionally that undermine the process. So if something happens, here's a few ways of thinking about or handling these difficult situations. And so here's a catchphrase or two, such as, oh, is that a selection criteria or is that your opinion? Oh, did we agree upon that in advance? I'm not quite sure what you meant by that. Can you re-say that? Can you restate that? So little catchphrases and redirection techniques sometimes allow difficult or tense situations to be diffused so that we can now acknowledge them and then make the appropriate judgments about this issue as a group. The third topic for training is interviewing. Drafting effective interview questions, using interview banks is a good way of starting. The do's and don'ts, and the do's and don'ts really surround, you can't ask questions about a person's marital status, can't ask a question about a person's national orientation. There's a whole list of those, and you can certainly find those on our website in our book, as well as, simply Google the topic out on the internet. The key is that you can only ask questions about things that are pertinent to a person's ability to do the job. Their marital status does not affect their ability to do the job of teaching, research, scholarship, or being an effective administrator. Next, conducting telephone or video interviews in general. That's a training topic that should be covered in any training session. The ability to evaluate presentations and other selection methods, as we've talked about before. How do you evaluate a questionnaire? How do you evaluate a work sample? How to conduct references should be a training topic because, for one, this is a matter of law in many states around what can and cannot be asked in a reference checking process. So, an additional training topics for HR professionals or ex officio members who are charged with training search committees. Finally, institution-specific training topics. Does the committee on your campus get involved in helping to define the position? Do they provide input to the hiring manager? When and how? How do we determine organizational fit, as we talked about before? And will we use organizational fit as a criteria? I think you should, because there's a lot of good reasons to do so. Organizational fit has to do more with retention than it does selection, and you want to really select someone who's going to fit within your organization and kind of live and breathe in the natural habitat of your organization. There's also a vignette in the search committee's book about this topic. Um, how to make a recommendation to the appointing authority. Is it a ranked list of candidates? Is it a list of candidates and their strengths and weaknesses and what they might bring to the institution, which is really the best practice approach to making a recommendation. But that should be covered also in the charge from the appointing authority and or doing the training of the committee. How to serve as an institutional ambassador, we talked about that earlier, as well as using the technology tools that are available to committees, whether it's requesting a position or an applicant tracking system where the resumes are out on the web, or any other technology used to help look at candidate screening, evaluate them, or go through the committee process. Many tools are out there, and the committee should be trained properly about how to do so, as well as any other topics that are unique to your institution. So we've talked about the 5 categories of topics for committees to be trained on. Let's talk about the committee chair. There are 4 topics for the committee chair as we wrap up our presentation. How to conduct a search, so a more comprehensive approach. The administrative and logistical matters for the committee. Where and how to get assistance, and when to ask for help. These are topics that every search committee chair should be privy to. How to conduct a search, as well as the processes and the tools and techniques that are there. Maybe some tutelage on how to conduct an effective meeting. We don't want to meet longer than necessary. We have volunteers who serve on the committee, and we want to do so in a professional manner to be respectful of their time. How to document the search and avoid common pitfalls are an additional topics for search committee chairs. And this is where the expert, the HR manager, or the ex officio member who's serving the committee can help to make sure that we just don't waste time and effort and do things in an improper manner. We can help them by ensuring that they don't make mistakes. and then liaise with various stakeholders, whether it's the department where the position is located, the appointing authority, the administration, and any other stakeholders, the faculty senate, who knows. The key is the search committee chair should be trained and oriented toward these sorts of ideas. There are lots of rules and policies and procedures on every campus about how you spend money, how you entertain candidates, the time frame for searches, where budgets are located. We won't spend a lot of time here, but needless to say, the chair should know these things as he or she embarks on leading the committee. Next, where to get assistance. These 5 or 7 topics here, or sources, are places to find help. The HR manager, the diversity or equal opportunity officer. Many committees may have a staff assistant assigned to them, whether that's from the hiring department, the HR department, or otherwise some administrative staff member who's designed to help with the administrative and logistical matters of the search. A diversity advocate, a person who has some advanced training and experience on helping committees deal with selecting without bias. The hiring authority, him or herself, could be a source, and other peers who've led committees before. They're all sources of assistance in the process. And then finally, you have on some campuses like meeting planners, people who are in charge of special events and meetings who can really help a committee chair from time to time if they're trying to host different events where candidates might entertain the community, particularly for like provosts or deans or high-level positions. So lots of support out there for a committee chair, and he or she should not feel like they're alone, even though it is a daunting task to manage one of these very important processes. We argue that making a selection decision for a faculty member who tends to have a 30 or 40-year career is a $3 million decision, and we want to do it well. And so search committee chairs should find solace in the fact that they have help in executing this very important task. When and how to train. We talked about this earlier, where in person at the first meeting is a great time for an ex officio or HR professional to deliver the training, or hold various training sessions throughout the year at designated time for anyone who might serve on the committee. Videos such as this one here serve well, or e-courses that are online that individuals can access on demand as needed. Training manuals are easy to use as well. The person can simply go to the web, or they can simply be given an attachment that covers the basic topics that they need. Some organizations also have this best practice approach to training, where before you serve on the committee you must be certified, meaning you've attended training and you've checked off that you have the requisite knowledge and experience for executing, as we said, this very important decision. Sometimes it's a $3 million decision. All right, as we conclude today, let's review the topics that we've covered. We've said that in search committee training, in any training for search committees, these are the essential topics that need to be covered. Recruiting and networking, the committee's role and responsibilities in that area, how to screen and evaluate candidates, how to mitigate bias in decision making, and how to have appropriate sensitivities around the process, how to interview well, and then various institution-specific topics. And finally, we've talked about the committee chair and his or her need for training as well on how to conduct the process writ large, how to ask for help, and where the resources available to support them within the process. So, thank you for viewing one of our training videos here at Search Committee Training Videos. We have a complete library of free training videos that is being developed, and you can be a part of defining which training programs appear by connecting with us and sending us your ideas and suggestions. At SearchCommittees.com, you will find a complete array of training resources designed to support the search committee process, including our book, our membership-based website, webinars, and access to free content such as our newsletter, blog, and these videos. Connect and communicate with us and other higher education professionals using one of these social media channels, or simply send us an email at SearchCommittees.com. Thank you again, and good luck on your searches.